Okay, so your much prayed for revaluation is tied directly into the release of your Republic of the United States being restored. They're just now deciding to show you what they've been working on for 20 years. Whatever drama or anxiety you are feeling stems exclusively from a lack of knowledge about the history of the situation, as the firm decision of exactly when to roll out the restored Republic's presence was made 20-some years ago. And they decided that the best timing to let everyone in on an already transitioned form of government was right before the 2016 US presidential election. Thus, with just 2 weeks remaining, now is that optimal timing to both announce the resignation of the USA Incorporated's President Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden. After all, in theory they are only relinquishing the final 2 weeks of their 8-year run, and no one is going to riot over 2 weeks. So knowing that this transition was upcoming, the Chinese elders made Pope Francis remove President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, and then Speaker of the House John Boehner resign, so as to make room for the global choice for leading a restored republic could be inserted via the constitutional line of succession. Speaker of the House is third in line for the presidency, should the president or vice president resign. If you'll recall, in October 2015, Paul Ryan reluctantly came forward to accept the Speaker of the House position in Congress, as he knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to set his country back on conservative, legal, and moral high ground, per the original intent of the Constitution. It also was his chance to be president, and possibly get 2 more terms, so 9+ years as Republic president. The truth here is that both Obama and Biden have been playing out their roles as leaders in order to keep the peace per the request of the Pope, who they serve. All presidents have served at the pleasure of the Vatican, sadly, which claimed ownership of this country until it defaulted in 2013. Why? Because back in 1871, then Republic President Alexander Hamilton sold out this country by forcing International Banking Authority over the Republic, which also secretly fell under the supervision of the Vatican's corporate control via the Act of 1871. The date was February 21, 1871, and the 41st Congress is in session. I refer you to the Acts of the 41st Congress, Section 34, Session 3, Chapters 61 and 62. On this date in the history of our nation, Congress passed an act titled, An Act to Provide a Government for the District of Columbia. This is also known as the Act of 1871. What does this mean? Well, it means that Congress, under no constitutional authority to do so, created a separate form of government for the District of Columbia, which is a 10-mile square parcel of land. What? How could they even do that? Moreover, why? To explain, let's look at the circumstances of those days. The Act of 1871 was passed at a vulnerable time in America. Our nation was essentially bankrupt, weakened, and financially depleted in the aftermath of the Civil War. The Civil War itself was nothing more than a calculated front for some pretty fancy footwork by corporate backroom players. It was a strategic maneuver by European interests, the international bankers, who were intent upon gaining a stranglehold on the neck, and the coffers, of America. The Congress realized that our country was vulnerable and in dire financial straits, so they cut a deal with the international bankers, thereby forcing our republic to incur debt to said bankers. But a bank will not do anything unless it is in their best interest to do so, thus there had to be some sort of collateral or some string attached which puts the borrower, the Republic of the United States, into a subservient position. This is true today just as it was back in 1871. These international bankers were not about to lend our floundering nation any money without some serious stipulations. So, they devised a brilliant way of getting their foot in the door of the United States, a prize they had coveted for some time, but had been unable to grasp thanks to our founding fathers, who despised them and held them in check. That was until they had President Alexander Hamilton force the Act of 1871 into existence. In essence, this act formed the corporation known as the United States. Note the capitalization, because it is important. This corporation, owned by foreign interests, moved right in and shoved the original organic version of the Constitution into a dusty corner. With the Act of 1871, our Constitution was defaced in the sense that the title was block capitalized and the word for was changed to the word of in the title. The original Constitution drafted by the Founding Fathers, was written in this manner. The Constitution for the United States of America. It is the corporate constitution. It is not the same document you might think it is. The corporate constitution operates in an economic capacity and has been used to fool the people into thinking it is the same parchment that governs the republic. It absolutely is not. Thus, the international banking cartel along with the Vatican secretly replaced our republic form of government with their corporate form of government, and moved America far away from the Founding Fathers' original intent of having a republic with a working constitution. And with this one congressional vote, we now find ourselves untangling from Hamilton's mess. The cabal's little joke on us is that the smash Broadway musical Hamilton, which they make the last Republic president look like a hero, when in truth he sabotaged his own country in favor of Eastern European dark nobility interests. A quote by Alexander Hamilton, quote, "Give all the power to the many, they will oppress the few. Give all the power to the few, they will oppress the many." End quote. This also means there has not been a fair election since 1871, when the Electoral College was legally introduced into law. And this is how and why our republic slowly began being replaced congressman by congressman, senator by senator, public appointee by public appointee, executive order by executive order until all were completely under the control of our Vatican masters. This Roman corporate control team, overseen by their Black Pope Jesuit leader, in this case also Pope Francis, had been making all decisions with regards to United States military, finance, laws and/or treaties since 1871. Although the United States Constitution refers to electors, neither the phrase Electoral College nor any other name is used to describe the electors collectively. It was not until the early 19th century that the name Electoral College came into general usage as the collective designation for the electors selected to cast votes for president and vice president. The term originated in the Holy Roman Empire, where the Latin phrase collegium electorum was used. Membership in the Holy Roman Empire's Electoral College was hereditary. The phrase was first written into federal law in 1845 and today the term appears in the U.S. Constitution. A quote by Thomas Jefferson, quote, "If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people, to whom it properly belongs. End quote. Meaning, there was a silent coup d'état against the Republic of the United States in 1871 without a single shot being fired, and Republic President Alexander Hamilton spoke of benevolent acts on behalf of the people, but did exactly the opposite as a double agent for Rome. Hey, no one said the truth would be easy to swallow. But all that changed in September 2015, when Rome was made to release the Republic of the United States back to its citizenry and ultimately back into its own sovereign control as we are witnessing right now. Thankfully, the same silent coup d'état can now be seen restoring of the Republic of the United States form of government, as it has finally been made whole without technically a single shot being fired. What comes around goes around, I suppose. Because neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump were ever determined to be president. Yes, even hardcore, tough as nails Hillary. In fact, both camps agreed in exchange for amnesty, Hillary and Bill, and financial and real estate favors, Donald, were always on creating the smoothest possible transition for reintroducing the republic to the American people. This has included Hillary's health scare and her chief of staff's WikiLeaked emails, and Donald's womanizing videos and business practice exposure. All of it has been planned to the last detail. Ironically, even the leak of John Podesta's emails were made by John Podesta himself. What incredible planning, with incredible public lying in order to incredibly protect the public safety. Just incredible. The good guys even laid the blame on Russia as a boogeyman for affecting the US election, as this is standard PSYOP strategy, as every sting needs to appear neutral in its final objective, and thus give the appearance of multiple outcomes for the individual to choose, when in truth there is only one outcome. It's planned and it will be implemented regardless of personal choice. Therefore, Hillary and Bill Clinton, John Podesta, FBI Director John Comey, Loretta Lynch, Donald Trump, WikiLeaks, Project Veritas, all major and alternative media outlets including CNN, MSNBC, and Fox are well aware of the transition outcome and playing their part to create a sense of realism to the inevitable conclusion. Meaning, a restored republic form of government has already been returned to its original constitutional intent, and a restored republic currency of rainbow money has now been issued, less Federal Reserve Bank, and yes, even a restored republic president has already been inserted without any major disruption to public confidence. So if you are still struggling to believe some or most of this, keep one thing in mind moving forward: isn't this election the oddest you've ever witnessed? Why is that? What the hell is John Kerry running around the world doing? Why is President Obama and Vice President Biden completely ignored and unaffected beyond normal lame duck status? Why is the Speaker of the House running a presidential campaign from that office? And better yet, why has he been signing military operation orders as Commander-in-Chief since October 2015? Oops, that's hard to believe, let alone prove, but if it is true, everything you've just read might also be true as well. But even interim Republic President Ryan must run in a presidential race come this November, or at the very latest January 3, 2016, per the Constitution, so as to keep everything appearing normal. Also per the Constitution, there must be peaceful transition power on January 20, 2016. This is another reason why the restored republic truth was held back until now, because the less time the American public has to freak out over having new candidates for president, should Hillary and Donald randomly fall out, the more likely, and less willing, they would be to riot. Hence, why everything had to be kept as a clandestine, classified state secret. Bernie Sanders is the only known Democratic candidate that ran for president during the election cycle, and thus why he is still in the public consciousness. He is the only acceptable candidate for president, and given those blatant DNC attacks on his campaign, it would make sense he has public sympathy to get a do-over and be allowed to run for president, should Hillary Clinton back out. Which we understand she will for health reasons at the appropriate time. Candidate Sanders will then select Elizabeth Warren to be his vice presidential running mate and hopefully get the woman's vote, as this is why she was trotted out earlier in the election cycle as potentially being Hillary Clinton's VP selection, because two women on the same ticket made no political sense. Thus, both the DNC scandal, including the removal of DNC chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a half dozen of her top staff, as well as Hillary's falling into the van on 9/11 due to hidden late-stage Parkinson's that was not so cleverly masked as pneumonia, were all just pre-planned psychological operation events that were designed to seed the US population for what is now an advanced psyop scenario that will now play itself out. Same goes for the Republican side and Donald Trump, who has been furiously stumping and debating on key talking point issues that will later be reiterated by Speaker of the House on why he has chosen to temporarily suspend the elections until January 3, 2017. These same talking points will then be the basis for interim Republican President and House Speaker Paul Ryan to suddenly prompt the U.S. Congress to not only suspend the U.S. presidential election till January 3, 2017, but potentially investigate Hillary Clinton as to the mass voter fraud uncovered by WikiLeaks and Project Veritas. Interim President Ryan will also not so quietly reset the US dollar back to the gold standard, which falls under US Congress authority, and place the money printing for the country back with the United States Treasury and not the private Federal Reserve Bank. No, all of this has long been planned. Nothing is organic to the current state of affairs. Donald Trump will then patriotically step aside, because Hillary Clinton will magically resign due to health reasons versus face public prosecution. This will allow interim President Ryan to run for the presidency. Trump will demand that he must keep Mike Pence as his vice presidential running mate, who was actually Paul Ryan's choice for VP and assigned to Trump. All will sing Kumbaya, and the presidential race between 45-year-old Republican conservative interim Republican President Paul Ryan and 75-year-old liberal Democrat Bernie Sanders will continue on with the current U.S. election cycle and meet that January 20, 2017 peaceful transition of power ceremony. By the way, Bernie mathematically has no shot of winning the president with his platform after 8 years of a Democratic presidency. But the legality and basic appearance of having an option other than Ryan must be made to satiate the people's desire to participate in a Democratic election. Trump will then stump for Ryan in order to get even more free publicity for his brand. Ryan will win in a landslide and go from interim president to president. And no one is the wiser. Plus, no one will riot, as everything appears to have been handled according to the Constitution. You see, folks, everything that is happening now was not only planned, it's been in an execution phase for several years in order to appear organic. Everyone is doing their part to create the illusion of normal election suspense, when in truth, the final outcome has long been decided and no other possible outcome exists. So the revaluation everyone is waiting on is not a maybe kind of situation, it's an absolute. The question is timing and how they intended to roll out the transitional changes inherent with replacing a form of government, a currency, and a leader. Ironically, this same execution phase or transition rollout is playing out in every other cabal corrupt government, with every other cabal corrupted currency, and every other cabal corrupted leader. They're all going through their own simultaneously, less their country's awareness. Incredible to think about, let alone follow with a calm heart. But this is what the Global Government Treaty, known as GSERA, Global Economic Security and Reformation Act, is forcing everyone, nation, race, and culture to accomplish now, as together we are now executing a completely benevolent pre-planned transition of our entire human experience for the next 1,000 years. And you're alive and in position to both witness and profit from it. Talk about incredible. Update clarification. 1. There never was a President Alexander Hamilton. First United States Secretary of the Treasury in office, September 11, 1789 to January 31, 1795. 2. Alexander Hamilton died in the year 1804. 3. Ulysses S. Grant was in office from March 4, 1869 to March 4, 1877. It was President Grant who sold us out to the Act of 1871. P.S. Alexander Hamilton was a central banker in reality.